You're a brave man, Bert.
It's the weather in Cambridgeshire.
One of my teachers, a long time ago, very long time ago, said to me, have you heard the expression, angels fear to tread where fools rush in? And I said, no, sir. And he said, no, I thought not.
Sandra, do you want me to read the housekeeping bits? If there's nobody there, I don't really need to, do I?
No, I don't think we need to bother tonight.
I make it 7:30, so we'll make a start. So welcome everybody to the Policy and Resources Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda are apologies. Do we have any apologies, Sandra?
Yes, Councillor Peter Thomas and Councillor Gardner substituting.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declaration of interest. To receive declarations of interest, disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests and the nature of those interests relating to item on the agenda. Has anybody got anything they wish to report? No. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda are minutes. To approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee held on the 8th of December 2020. On pages 1 and 2 in your agenda pack. Has everybody had the opportunity? Sorry, Councillor Redding.
Yeah, can I just ask for a couple of minor corrections? Well, it appears that whoever's typing these out has an aversion to the S key. So item 2, I think it is, it's got Councillor P. Whiting, son-in-law and grand on rather than grandson.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
Okay.
And a bit later at 5.1, it's got Councillor Mr. P. Whiting. Now, looking at Pam at the moment, I don't think she's booked in for the operation yet.
That's for me to know and you to find out.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Redding.
Good job you picked it up, Tony, because I didn't.
No, neither did I. So can I sound these as a correct record? Could I have a show of hands, please? Right, thank you. Right. Thank you. Right. Item 4 on the agenda is the public forum. To allow any member of the public to address the meeting for a period of no longer than 3 minutes each. I believe there are no members of the public wishing to speak. Am I correct?
Yes, there's nobody else, no public here tonight.
Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda are the risk assessments. To review the risk assessments, which are on page 3 to 9 on your agenda pack. Has everybody had a chance to look at the risk assessments? Has anybody got any comments that they wish to make? Councillor Redding.
Yeah, it's the same as the last one. There's under direct costs, I think, I've got scroll down here. It's got good, and I think it's meant to be goods received. So there's a missing S again. I'm only doing it to prove that I've actually read them.
Oh no, that's all right. I do have a dodgy keyboard actually, and I do. It annoys me. So yeah, I do apologise for that. I mean, Councillor Reeve, you did speak to me yesterday about these, a couple of things. First of all, I mean, what I will amend it under precept on the risk assessment and management table. She asked what DC stood for, which is District Council, and it's quite right that we put that in full. So anybody reading it who's not who doesn't understand the acronyms or abbreviations does understand that. Also, under risk of consequential loss of income, I see it sort of got cut off to be increased. Fidelity guarantee insurance, I've actually just increased from 1 million to £2 million. And the reason for that, and it used to be increased due to receipt of the phase 5 section 106 money, which has now been received, which took us at a maximum time in the year, we will have over £1 million, and our insurers do it in bands rather than, because I asked for 1.3, but they do it in bands, so it has been increased to 2 million because you're supposed to cover what the maximum amount you would have in your account. So I do need to just make that on the notes, make that very clear. And also on the last thing under staff, we actually put the control assistant clerk now in place, but it might sound as we only just appointed the assistant clerk, and whereas she's been in post for over 4 years now. So that just needs amending to say is assistant clerk in post or not,
Yeah.
you know, so it doesn't look like really just appointed.
Right. Councillor Redding.
Yeah, it's a question really for Sandra. I mean, the preset bit where it says DC and you now say district council, as these risk assessments are run through the rest of 2021 into 2022, I assume. Should we not be adding, I don't know, / unitary council or something there? Because presumably the preset will come from them in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Sandra, can you as well, as we discussed on Monday, under the employer liability where it says that we have annual appraisals, we were going to put a note in the notes to say that it was done virtually this year.
Yeah.
Just right. Is there anything else anybody wishes to say? Sandra, you said that we were going to look at the legal case over the possession of land at Glebe Farm.
Yes, I mean that's an ongoing one, and I put that there as a risk because ultimately we do own the land. It's just all the issues with the manure being on there and him grazing, and we have put signage up. We are encouraging the public to use it, but it's one of those pieces of work, unfortunately, that probably falls to the bottom of the pile, and we need to think what we're going to do. We have spent some legal fees on having opinions on it, and I suppose at some point the council's got to decide how robust they want to be in dealing with it. So I think that's one that's got to come forward another time. But it obviously is a risk because it could ultimately incur the council in quite hefty legal fees, depending which way it went.
Right, okay, thank you. And the impact of local government reform, did we have that written down anywhere? Or is it just on the...
It's just, these are sort of issues to note that we don't know what really is going to happen post 1st of April, if there's anything that the council is going to be expected to take on or anything. So there is an element of financial risk ultimately to the council, and they're just issues to note. So there's no specific risk assessment, but they're more issues to note that could impact on the council going forward at some point.
I'm trying to remember, Sandra, the precept, is that paid in one lump or is that paid over the year?
It's paid in two sums, one at the end of April and one at the end of September.
So we've got a risk there of the one at the end of April, bearing in mind we're then over to unitary, that there may be some form of delay or a problem with that payment. Is that not part of a risk?
That is part of the risk, and that's why you have general reserves, really. Because some people say, why have you got general reserves? And one of the risks is that you don't actually get the money on time from the precepting authority, and that's what they're there for. I mean, we have, with our earmark reserve, we have quite a good buffer of money available. So if we didn't get paid on the time, it's not going to be an issue to us. But obviously to some councils, if they didn't have enough reserves, they could end up with no money in their bank account.
Thank you.
That is a... You would hope they've got those systems sorted by the 1st of April.
You are joking.
Councillor Jackson.
We're supposed to have reserves so that should we have a shortfall from the precept of 6 months, isn't it? So,
Well, it's depending on your site, it's 3 to 12 months is what the aim is. I mean, obviously, if you're a very small council with a precept to say 10,000 a year, I would say you need £10,000 general reserves. Ours, I mean, I've covered it in the earmark reserves, sort of usually falls between 3 and 6 months, because at the end of the day, we haven't got a cash flow issue because we've got so many earmark reserves anyway.
but with the unitary, they're talking about their officers being in situation April. So there shouldn't be a problem with the transmission over. And the last thing that I would have thought they will want is for them to default on payments, because it would be very embarrassing for them, wouldn't it?
Well, you've got to be, it's not just us, is it? It's the police as well and
Yeah.
all the
I'm
other
saying
parishes.
it would be
So, yeah.
exceptionally embarrassing if all of
Yeah.
a sudden everybody was going around cap in hand saying you haven't paid us. So I don't think that that's a
No, I mean, I only raise it as it is a risk. There is a
Yeah.
risk there that something could go wrong, but we're covered by the fact, as Sandra said, that we have got
reserves.
a large reserve, so we could keep going. I can't see them defaulting for 12 months or something stupid, unless there's a complete breakdown of their organisation, which is unlikely. But I'm just raising it as a possible risk, that flagging it up, that's all.
There's some councils, even if you've got a delay of a week or so, may put them in a position. And I think certainly this year, where some councils have been impacted on their income by COVID, are in actually quite a serious situation, because I see some of the figures that are bandied about on that.
Okay. Right. Councillor Prigmore.
Just on the side note on that, Sandra, if they did default, is there a backup plan of what would not be paid?
The government would have to pay.
I mean, what we would not pay out initially in order to continue. What would stop first?
No,
There would be no need.
it'd have to be project work that would stop first.
Right.
Because obviously you're committed to paying salaries, utilities.
Yes.
Some of your sort of routine things. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in default of sort of routine contracts. So it'd be project work that would have to fall first.
Right. Okay.
But I don't honestly, it'd have to be quite serious default by the district or unitary authority for us to be in that situation, to be looking at what we weren't going to pay.
Right. Okay.
Right. Is there any other comment from anybody? Can I have a proposal that we say that we have reviewed the risk assessments? Thank you, Councillor Redding, and Councillor Whiting, thank you for seconding. And all those in favour, would you please show hands? Thank you. All right, item 6 on the agenda is the review of council internal controls and internal audit. To review the internal controls and internal audit, which is on pages 10 to 16 in your agenda. So
these don't change much from year to year, but I have put in italics sort of what we're actually doing during COVID. And in fact, the internal audit report will come to council at the end of the month. It came after this agenda had been released, but I had to explain to him how we were dealing with things like signing minutes and dealing with the payments, and he was entirely happy with what processes we'd put in place.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions that they wish to ask? Any comments that you wish to make? So are we all happy with the internal controls and internal audit? Can I propose then that we have reviewed it and that we've received it? So could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And all those in favour, would you please show hands? Thank you. Right, item 7 on the agenda is the review of insurance. To to review the insurance cover, which is on pages 17 to pages 30. Has anybody got any comments they wish to make or any questions that they wish to ask Sandra? Councillor Pridmore.
As Sandra, have you got any concerns about this at all?
No, I mean, I highlight too that most of our street furniture and street lighting, smaller pieces of equipment are not covered for anything but public liability. But that's because by the time something was damaged, and we paid the excess, it's probably hardly worth claiming. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're in we'll be coming into the second year of a 3-year contract with Zurich. We've been with Zurich for some time, but they've always been very good. And we had a fire with the Bowls Club that, you know, they paid out no problem. And certainly they've had to defend some tree claims and things for us. So they're not they don't pay out unnecessarily. So,
No.
You know, I'm quite happy with the cover we've got.
Are we just going to put the cemetery chapel in the right place, Sandra?
Yes.
Because it's down as College Street.
It's interesting. It's interesting because this insurance policy has been in place for years, and Councillor Reevy did actually point out to me that the address is on it, and that's probably something I've never noticed. So it was actually, I'm going to get all them changed to make sure it's clear where they actually are.
Well, you know what insurance people are like if you've got the wrong address down at the top of it. Right. So can I propose that we have reviewed the insurance cover? Have I got a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And all those in favour, would you please show? Right, thank you. Right, and item 8 on the agenda is to review of the asset register, which is on pages 31 to 39 in your agenda pack. Has anybody got any comments that they wish to make?
I have got to add on the 3 benches that were donated, that are made out of the oak trees at Castle Fields, but they will only go in as a nominal pound value because it's a community asset and we actually didn't buy them, so they were donated, and that's the sort of standard figure you put in for a community asset.
Right. What happens with insurance on those sort of things, Sandra? Can you insure?
Like I wouldn't insure it, because what you're going to insure it, what would be your value?
Firewood.
In one way. But fire, they could be burnt, and that would be the only thing.
But the only value would be firewood, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
No. You're just throwing money away if you insure something like that, because it is naturally, okay, with oak, it will deteriorate over about 200 years. But generally, things are deteriorating over the years. So what is the point of insuring them?
Okay. Thank you. So is there any other question that anybody or any comments that anybody wants to make? In that case, can I propose that we have done a review of the asset register? Could I have a seconder, please? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Redding. And all those in favour, would you please show of hands? Right, thank you. Right, item 9 on the agenda is to appoint the appointment of an independent internal auditor for 2020-2021 to appoint NCALC Internal Audit Service as an independent internal auditor for 2021 to 2022. So, actually, Sandra, is that wrong?
Have I got the date?
No, it's just on the top bit of mine. It says to 2020 to 2021, but it is actually 2021 to 2022.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, has anybody got any comment that they wish to make on this? Or yes, Councillor Pridmore.
Sandra, is there anybody else? Because I take it this is the same people that have been auditing the books for a long time. And I take it are they a government body?
They, you know, the Northamptonshire Association of Local Councils. It's a sort of an area of work that they've set up. So, to be honest, there probably is other people. I would suggest you'd probably end up paying more. And these actually have
Yeah, I
They
just
actually, I mean,
wondered
what they
'cause-
do, it doesn't have to be the same person with them.
No.
They have obviously a bank of people. The beauty of them, they do have meetings directly with external auditor, what's going on, and they're in the sector and understand the sector. So you need
Yeah.
somebody who understands.
So I think just
the
over the last
sector.
few years, these are the only people that ever do it, aren't they? We've
Councillor,
never,
To be honest,
never had
in
anybody
this
else
area,
do
yes,
it.
they're the main people.
Okay.
Councillor Jackson.
Large PLC companies are advised to change their auditors every 5 years. Obviously, they're concerned that if they're not careful, they will either get into a rut, or one or two members will find that they can have some very financial inducements to oversee things or to overlook things. So possibly we should be thinking, should we be? I mean, how long have we been using this particular auditor?
Well, since before my time, we've always
Yeah,
used
I don't
NCALP
think-
internal audit, but I think
Yeah.
you had, when I first came, you actually had a different person who did it, and I let him do it the first year, and he actually wasn't doing the job he should have been doing, because what he was doing was basically ticking off your cash book to the entries, and that's not what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be looking at your governance and your procedures and making sure you've got these sort of things in place. And that's why it's useful having somebody who understands what the expectations is. But it doesn't mean we can't go back and say we want a different person from the internal audit service who will probably come with a different set of eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
But then
Councillor
again-
Gardner, Councillor Gardner, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to make a point, please?
Thank you very much. Really, it's just an observation. NCAL, they work in the sector, they understand the sector, they understand, the demands of the sector, and I, to me, it just seems very sensible to stick with them. Yeah, have another body, another fresh set of eyes, looking at it, but they understand the sector, and perhaps another external auditor wouldn't exactly understand the sector in the detail that obviously NCALP with. And the other question really is to the clerk. Are you happy working with NCALP? How have you found them as for working with?
I mean, I find them very good to work with, and we've had to put in virtual processes over the past 12 months, and that's worked well. He always comes up with some little things like, this time he was looking particularly at things on the website, and unfortunately there was a set of minutes that was loaded for the annual meeting, weren't actually the annual meeting minutes, which he found, which that's fair enough. He's found some, in some ways it's nice for them to find
So
something.
that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good thing, and you can't always beat per, we have a good chat, and but I like the fact that they do have the link into the external auditor and what they're looking for, and they also review what been the problems within councils the previous year, so they're looking at them, what they need to be looking at and working on.
Thank you.
But I
Councillor
honestly
Jackson.
think you could go elsewhere, but it'd be more expensive, I would think.
Right, Councillor Jackson, I'll come back to you,
Well,
and then Councillor Martin.
Well, as long as you're happy, because obviously the government has just declared that the actual board members of large companies will be prosecuted rather than the auditors who actually committed a mistake. So as long as you're happy, then that's fine.
Well, remember
Thank
we
you,
have
Councillor
external
Whiting.
we have external auditors as well.
Yeah.
That they just do the interior. But as I say, and it is the council being happy. In fact, it's not about me being happy. It's about the council being happy.
I'm just being a little bit facetious there.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that the board members are saying, if it's the auditors that make mistake, why are you prosecuting us? It should be the auditors you prosecute.
Thank you. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My theory is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. These people know what we're doing. We know what they're doing and the way they work. And I think if the town clerk is happy, I'd like to propose that we carry on for another year. But if councillors are so minded, it may well be worth looking at an alternative for next year, bearing in mind it probably will cost extra money. But that's what I'd like to propose, that we go for this year and then have a look if needed.
I'll second
Thank
that.
Thank you. And all those in favour, would you please show hands? Right, thank you. Right, item 10 on the agenda is the review of policies. To review the following policies, which is on page 40 in your agenda pack. The policies that are due for annual review, the ones that I'm going to go through, the ones that are where no changes are proposed. So no changes are proposed for the sickness absence policy, the retirement policy, the equal opportunities policy, the financial regulations and safeguarding policy. Shall we have a vote on those first, Sandra, and then vote on the other one? Or yes.
Yeah, I would do that.
Okay, so I propose that we have reviewed those policies and they need no change. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gardner, and all those in favour, please show hands. Thank you. Right, there is a policy which needs an amendment, which is the standing orders, Amendment 3I, to read, if the item raised by the member of the public is not on the agenda, the clerk will advise how the issue will be followed up. That is the proposed amendment. Sandra, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, that was to follow on really from what the internal auditor said about a year ago, that when somebody came and spoke at the meeting, it didn't really give an indication of what to happen. They spoke and then nothing happened necessarily. And so this was sort of the way of saying, you know, I will take it away and respond to you, or we can answer it now in the public forum. I think it's just to make it a bit more interactive, I suppose, with the public.
Councillor Pridmore.
Yes, thank you. If that's the case, shouldn't it not read, if the item raised is not on the agenda, but if the item raised by the member of public is not on the agenda?
It is
No,
there.
so it's,
That's what it says.
yeah, it doesn't sound right. Sorry. I'll
If
think
the
on that
item-
one.
The only question that I've got is that instead of being followed up, we should have addressed.
Yeah,
Only
Yeah.
because you shouldn't end a sentence with the preposition. That's just a grammatical.
Yeah, it's just,
But
Teacher.
it would then read, if the item raised by the member of the public is not on the agenda, the clerk will advise how the issue will be addressed.
yeah,
Should do.
yeah, because that makes sense. Because
Yeah,
if it's on the
yeah.
agenda, they will obviously hear later on how
Yes,
it's been
yes.
dealt with. Yeah,
But if it's not on the agenda, then you will be able to say,
yes, that's, yeah, I can,
we will do this or we will do that, or we can't do this or we can't do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that all right, Councillor Pridmore?
yeah, it didn't
Yeah.
make sense without that bit in it. Because it looked as if they were just doing something that was not on the agenda for the sake of it.
No, it does actually say
Yeah,
is not on the agenda, if it is not on the agenda.
yeah.
Okay, Councillor Redding, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, some of the wording earlier on was a bit, I was getting slightly concerned with, because we either state to the member of the public, thank you very much for your statement, we will follow up.
Yeah,
But if you say we're now going to do this, are we not running the risk of getting into a discussion with them, which is not allowed under other sections of the standing orders?
no, it might be that I take their contact, say, please leave your contact details. I will follow you up. I'll give you an answer by email, not to have discussion. It'll be just something like that, rather than just leaving it and not knowing. They're left in midair otherwise.
Yeah, what I don't want is somebody, a member of the public, having read the standing orders, then saying we haven't actually answered my question, and we know that, you know, elsewhere in the standing orders, we're not supposed to have a discussion with them.
Yeah.
It was just that, I mean, in practice, I know what will happen, but I just don't want it left in a position that somebody could read into that section something more than what is meant.
I think that goes on the end of the bit already that says, you know, there's no discussion on this item, if I remember rightly. And that's just to go on the end, because otherwise at the moment they are left, I suppose, hanging a bit in limbo. And it might be that they raise something that I already know the answer to. So I might be able to give them the answer straight away, but often it'll be say, yes, we'll take that back. It might be that'll be on the next agenda. That will be, I'll look into that and come back to you by email or our phone. Is probably what's going to happen.
Okay, so does anybody else want to say anything? So can I then propose that we make the necessary amendment to Standing Orders 3I? Could I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Redding. And all those in favour, would you please show hands? Thank you. Right. Right. Item 11 on the agenda is the business forward plan to receive progress with projects and works detailed in the business forward plan, which is on pages 41 to 45 in your agenda pack. Has anybody got any comments that they wish to make? Or any questions that they would like to ask? No, in that case, could I propose that we have reviewed the business forward plan? Have I got a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gardner, and all those in favour, please show hands. Thank you. Right, item 12 on the agenda is reserves. To consider the report from the town clerk on the levels of earmarked reserves, which is on pages 46 to 47.
Yeah,
Is it reserves or resources, Sandra?
Resources.
It's reserves, earmarked reserve. Oh God, yes. Sorry.
It says earmarked resources on the the agenda, but yeah, is it resources?
Reserves. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Was an opportunity because I don't think even when we set the budgets, we really. I mean, you have a list of what's in each earmarked reserve, but perhaps that's background I've given why they've been held historically, so you can understand why they've been put in position. I mean, some of them, such as the Section 106 money, can only be used for specific things. And equally, the money that was handed over when we had the toilets handed over can only be used on the toilets. The building asset maintenance reserve, we didn't have one till a few years ago, but we started to build that up because ultimately at some time you'll have some big maintenance work such as resurfacing Sackham Road car park, so you do need to build up a fund. And to be honest, it actually came into its own when the churchyard wall fell down, which cost £25,000 to repair, because if you hadn't had that reserve it would have just had to come out of general reserves. And then Hyman Ferrers improvements, we actually haven't put anything in there since 2018-19. It was an idea that we sort of copied from Rushton that had this little pot of money. So if you get projects come up during the year that you didn't know about when you set the budgets, or sometimes you get grant funds that come up with a very short time span that you could take advantage of, that sort of funds there to use to do that sort of thing.
Sandra, could I just ask, in that bit that you just done now, it says at the end, no funds have been transferred for over 4. So can you finish that before?
Yes, I will. Yeah.
I presume it's for a number of years, but
right, yeah, it was since 2018-19. So I'll check that.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Jackson, you have a question you wish to ask?
Yes, obviously, we're going through the throes of cemetery. We obviously were hoping we were going to have a shared cemetery where it would have been, the cost would have been possibly far more reasonable than if you go it alone. It's obvious that with the Rochester Sioux, they are going to stick to where they positioned it, because obviously they've done their master plan virtually now. What are we going to do? Because obviously we've got £52,000 in a budget, and part of it was possibly for investigating the costs of reinterring the remains of people that have been buried for over the 100 years. What are we going to do? Are we going to decide we will go alone for a new cemetery, which I consider the cost of going alone is far too prohibitive for us? What are we going to do about making a decision?
Well, that's down to the council. I mean, obviously, last time we looked at this, there is no land that we've been allowed access. Yeah, I mean, we have used some of that funds for investigation on the old part of the cemetery, and as I explained to personnel, we did a review of what outstanding work we've done, and there is still some work to be done on the really old part of the cemetery, which may well need to use some of this money to actually create plots. And I mean, in the first part where it's really old. I mean, we have gone through the process of reclaiming plots that were pre-sold and that were over 75 years old. We've followed the proper process, so those plots have now been put into our plots available for use. And we are, over the next month or so, we will do another sort of double check on what plots we've actually got, we've got available without using the really old part.
I just wondered whether you'd considered sort of working out unfortunately, COVID could throw this out of the window. Although I don't think we've had a massive increase in deaths, have we? Because of COVID that's affecting our cemetery. Would you say?
Not a massive, haven't had a massive increase, but I do think that certainly people who perhaps had cremations were holding back to when they thought they could have a bigger service. So I don't know whether we'll get a rush later. I mean, we're having a steady flow, I would say.
No,
but
I'm just wondering whether we could calculate approximately how many we would need and what it would cost for that area of ground for the remains to be exhumed. And I'm not quite certain how they do dispose of them. Sometimes they bury them somewhere else together. Sometimes they cremate them, don't they? But would it be worthwhile considering getting a cost to get, say, 5 years burials, and then presumably the costs of burials should then be utilised to clear the next area? I think we've got to be realistic.
There is some work to do on this, but in London, you can reuse burial space. London is that legislation doesn't expand to us, but the company we used who did the radar survey did say there is a way where they're unidentified, I believe, that we could perhaps use them, and that is unfortunately a piece of work that needs some time on it, and it also is better in the office where, because the plan is hard copy, not electronic, for the old part of the cemetery. And the old part, this really old part, is quite hard because there's some of the numbers are duplicated because you've got what you call common graves and then bought graves. So it isn't, I know this, and it is quite complicated. I mean, if you came in and looked at the plans, you start looking and you think, oh, what's that one? You know, it is a bit higgledy-piggledy, the old part. But that is a piece of work. Well, I do know I need to get on with when
it's just that I look at the cemetery. You have the cemetery chapel there, you have all the facilities for waters, etc., and you think, why on earth are we considering spending? And we've got to be realistic. Well, you would be talking about nearly £1 million, wouldn't you, to provide cemetery land plus fence it all in? You've got to go, we're never going to raise that much.
Yeah.
So I feel we should be considering finding out the alternatives. But, you know, it's a question of the council. As you
I did do a report on that before, and I can bring the report back to P&R. I mean, obviously, we've done the first tranche of pre-sold plots that are over 75 years old, and that can be done on a regular basis. So it's those plots that were sold and not used.
Yeah, I realise
and
that.
is something we can do regularly.
That's windfall sites, isn't it? But I'm talking about just if it's possible to start at the top and just work down a section and say that would give us 5 years. It is going to cost X number of pounds, whether it was feasible. It's a question of finding out whether it's feasible to do it, isn't it?
But I think there's legalities on it, and I mean, I think that's the issue. And I think I'll have to rehash my report I did before and bring that back to a future P&R so you understand what we're actually working on.
I don't want to be macabre about this, but unfortunately, a lot of the areas are going to have the same sort of problem because some of the people are having considerable numbers of fatalities, deaths, or whatever you wish to call them. So therefore, everybody else is going to be thinking. So I would have thought the government should be sympathetic to extending the ruling they've given to London because of their problems of running out of land. They should extend it to the rest of the country. Anyway.
Councillor Prickman,
yeah, that has been lobbied on for a long time.
Yeah. Councillor Prickman, did you want to come in?
I think just a quickie on the graves. I think the true realistic thing is that sooner or later we will not have any graves for anybody within town, and I think we won't be the only people. It's how we get that message across to people that it is just how it's going to be, and I don't know how you're going to get that across. But maybe you're right, Sandra. Maybe you need to bring it to a P&R meeting maybe the next time and see what you can put on there and what we need to discuss.
I think once before we found that we were going round and round and round in circles.
Yeah, we are.
And we said, didn't we, that we wouldn't discuss it until Rushden East had been,
which is now done.
Which it's now done.
Yeah.
We've got to be realistic. They will not. I'm sorry, I don't consider they.
No, they won't. No, you're right. But I think realistically, we're going to come to the stage that sooner or later we're going to be saying to people, there is nowhere to bury you, and that's how it's going to be.
No, you've missed the point of what I said. You start from the top of the corner.
But the cost of doing that could be far more excessive than what it's really ideally worth.
How do we know? We haven't asked the question.
Yeah. So that's what I said. Sandra can maybe bring something to the next meeting.
But you've also missed the other point that I said. Then the next burials would have to bear that cost in mind for the amount you charge for burials.
I think what Sandra said before was that she knows that this has got to be finished, but obviously not this year because we've done a lot with COVID. So yes, it's work that she knows that needs to be done. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Exactly what I was going to say. I think we're digressing a little bit here. We all appreciate there is an awful lot of work to do there. The town clerk has already said it's work that needs to be done when the girls can go back in the office with a plan in front of them. And I think at this moment in time, we can't put any more pressure on them. We know we've got enough for the next little while, and hopefully there won't be that many more. Majority of the people who are dying from COVID are being cremated, so we could have quite a bit of a influx eventually for the burial of ashes plots. But I think for the rest of it should be left until a little bit later on when the girls are back in the office, have got a chance to look at it and be able to do the work properly. We went through this 12 months ago. And
12 months before that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
this is what concerns me.
Just one at a time, please. I can't hear. Sorry, Councillor Whiting, can you finish?
Yeah, no. All I was going to say was I think we've got to leave this for now and take it to another agenda in a few months' time when hopefully we've got back to normal a little bit.
Thank you. Is everybody satisfied?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. So what have I got? I forgot what
you need to vote so that you receive and note that report.
Yes. Can I propose? Would you like to propose Angela, sorry, Councillor Gardner.
Yes, thank you. Can I just propose that we receive and note and move forward, please?
Thank you. Can I have a seconder,
Seconder.
please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting, and all those in favour, would you please show hands? Thank you. Right, item 13 on the agenda are items to report. To report on any items not included on the agenda, no decisions can be made under this item. Has anybody got anything they wish to bring to our attention? Right, no, right, thank you. Item 14, the annual town meeting. To consider whether to postpone the annual town meeting due to be held on the 9th of March or to hold virtually. Has anybody got any comment that they wish to make? Councillor Gardner first.
Thank you very much. I think we need to postpone it. I think, as we're finding out at the moment, holding things virtually is okay to a certain extent, but it also we've got so many other parts of the community that do not have access to either the internet or don't know how to do it. So that it's, you know, excluding large parts, and an annual town meeting is exactly that, isn't it? It's anybody in the town that can come and be a part of that. So at the moment, I think we just need to postpone it.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, you wish to say something?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say exactly the opposite. I can see no reason why we shouldn't hold it, because, I mean, for the new unitary, they are having Zoom it's Teams meetings of 150 people. Yes, it's not really practical for that number, but we have never had that number for a town meeting. So I can't see why. I mean, what is the reason that it shouldn't go ahead?
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Because the date, you have to hold it between the 1st of March and the 1st of June. So I didn't want to take the decision to say we're going to hold it either way. So I felt that it was your call which way you did it.
Right, Councillor Whiting.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the town clerk, are we legally bound to have a town meeting? I mean, we all know that the only people at an annual town meeting recently have been the councillors. But I mean, are we legally bound to have it? Or could, like, the corresponding district, county and other councillors put, you know, like the mayor, have a notice on the notice board?
This is a really interesting one, and it's created a lot of conversation on my forums. You are supposed to have an annual town meeting or annual parish meeting each year. It is common practice that it is called by the town or parish council, but it doesn't have to be. It could be called by a member of the public. So I think if you didn't have it, there's no way of anybody coming after you to say you should have had it and you're legally bound to do it. It's a may do. So it's a really interesting one, but it is convention to hold one, and then it is called by the town council.
Thank you, Councillor Prigmore.
That's exactly the same question I was going to ask, but obviously now leading on to that is obviously if we don't have one, you're saying that a member of the public could call for an annual town meeting to be held, at which point would we be duty bound to all attend?
No.
Councillor.
It wouldn't look very good if the town councillors didn't attend when a member of the public considered it was their duty to hold one, surely.
They never turn up from anyway.
Councillor Redding.
I think one of the problems with people not turning up is it tends to be can be a cold March evening, and on a Monday, I think it's a Monday we normally do it. And therefore we don't get people wanting to come out, whereas a Zoom or Teams or any other meeting, we might well get people coming out. But what I was going to ask was, Sandra, you said you have to hold it between before June.
Yeah.
You said, is there a difference when the council term, the election intercedes. So, you know, most years we don't have an election. This year we've got an election. Do we have to hold it before the election so the current councillors have to answer any questions about what's been going on, or can we postpone it until after the election?
Postpone it to after the election. It does make no difference.
Because in that case, I mean, I wonder whether after May might be the best time to be doing it, because hopefully we may be starting to open up, and we may be able to hold some form of meeting on that, even if it's councillors in the chamber and Zoom for others, so we don't we can still socially distance, which I imagine will be happening.
I think the difficulty is if we do go back to face, we may have to look at another venue to start off with, because you cannot exclude members of the public coming to the town hall if it's a meeting that's open to the public, and that is going to be our difficulty if we still got social distance.
Does it have to be in that format though, Sandra? I mean, could we publicise everything that we would normally do at the AGM, and then ask if there's any member of the public would like to present a question, and if we could accumulate those and then maybe have a Zoom meeting with the people that wanted to ask us questions, rather than having it a general open meeting?
No, it's supposed to be a general open meeting.
It's got to be an open
because
meeting. Okay.
yeah, because technically at that meeting anybody could put forward a resolution to be voted on, or they could put forward a request for a referendum on something, or a poll on something.
Right, thank you. I'm not sure whether it was Bert or Barry first, so
I'll let Barry go.
We were saying that it's June, did we say? Is that the beginning of June?
1st of June, yeah, 1st of June.
So I would tend to think then that maybe we need to look at the last date possible in May, because then that gives us 3 or 4 months to decide and work around it, and we can go from there then.
thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Jackson. Sorry.
Not a problem. I think you'll find that the government is considering what they term hybrid meetings, and they're obviously considering this so that, in other words, councillors could possibly meet in the chambers with self-distancing, and then members of the general public on Teams or whatever. They are discussing how they can evolve a hybrid meeting. So presumably they're looking at this problem as well.
Thank you.
I will say, can I just say, if we're going to have hybrid, we need some new equipment. We haven't got the right equipment to do a hybrid meeting at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Whiten, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to come up with one silly suggestion. You obviously have to advertise an annual town meeting anyway, irrespective. If you advertised it and said that it would have to be by Zoom, any interested parties to apply to the town hall for the Zoom link, then we would know whether we've got anybody interested in coming or not. And we could just hold it by councillors on Zoom, or B, then if we've got no response from the public, we could cancel.
That sounds to me quite a good proposal.
Could they not turn up on the day though? And
Not if they haven't got the Zoom link.
Not if you've advertised Zoom.
Oh no, I would imagine they could still just turn up on the day, and
they could. And remember, councillors are members of the public on this one, not there as a councillor.
So they could literally turn up on the day and ask a question, or they could ask whatever. So they wouldn't need to actually tell us they're going to turn up. They could just turn up.
If you haven't got a Zoom link, you wouldn't be able
to turn up. They could ask for the Zoom link at any point.
I think you have to make the Zoom link public, I think, though, just like you do for the town council meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Redding, would you like to come in now?
Sandra has already mentioned that it's obviously a hot topic well, it may not be a hot topic. It might be a topic on the various clerking forums. Is there any inkling at the moment of what the government are thinking? Because it's not just a question for us. I mean, this thing of town or parish meetings is general for all parish council level councils, which town, village, whatever. So it's not just us, and this is the time of year that they all do it because it's laid down in law. Now, the government must be aware that there's a problem here, and obviously the clerks are aware because they're discussing it in forums. Do we just can we just say we're going to postpone it until we get more up-to-date information from the government of how to possibly run these? Would that cover ourselves? And if they don't come up with anything before the 1st of June, well, we'll just shrug our shoulders and say, well, we were never advised how to do this safely anyway.
You can do that. Some councils didn't hold one last year because obviously we managed to have ours just before the lockdown came in. Some councils never held one last year, and some of them probably are not going to bother this year because there's been a lot of talk around this, whether it's a duty, you must or you may, and it is quite clear that there isn't any obligation on the town council to call it, even though it's normal custom that it is called by the town council. So some are just
can I suggest then that if there is that possibility, that we actually decide now that we're not going to hold it on March the 9th, and that we may postpone it, or we may just not have one. So, but initially we are not going to have the AGM on March the 9th. So could I have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah.
And can I have a vote on that, please? Right, thank you. So we now know that we're not going to have one on March the 9th, and we'll wait to hear from you, Sandra, as to what's happening with, in your forums, and then we can bring it to another meeting to discuss whether we're going to hold one at a later date. Before June.
If it comes up.
And if it comes up virtually or an open one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you might get more virtually. I don't know because it's easier to attend. Interesting.
You never know. But like Angela said, it does exclude some of the public.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Yeah.
We're not
look at different. Yeah.
Sorry.
To look at different ways. I know some that have had it on a Saturday instead, done it slightly differently. So
yeah, right. Well, it doesn't have to be of an evening either, does it? So on the Saturday. So. Okay, right. So oh gosh, I've turned my page over. Sorry. Item 15 on the agenda is the date of the next meeting. Oh my goodness. The date of the next meeting is the 14th of April 2021. Right. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and stay safe, everybody, and I'll see you before April anyway, but I'll see you all shortly. I'll see you in the morning, Alicia.
Have a good evening, all of you.
Right, thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Oh, Alicia, Liz Brown phoned. She's not coming tomorrow to the meeting because she's actually resigning as chair of tourism.
Oh my goodness.
For health reasons. So
you did actually email me, Sandra, so I did read that actually just
so
earlier. So
oh goodness.
She's waiting to go in hospital, and